everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, joined by Ken Weed from Sportsnet. Together we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the long-form Kenny and Renny show, and one we are so absolutely excited about. We had talked about Kevin Bieksa as being our white whale that we were trying to get on the show for so long, Ken. And Sheldon Kennedy was right there. There's two Moby Dicks in the ocean, everybody. The white whale that we've been trying to get on the show for a while. We've locked it down. We're so excited to have such a prominent figure in the hockey community and a fellow Manitoban, at least from where he started from, joining us. I know some people are excited for us to be back. It's been a while since we've been doing this. You can see Julie Sue's joined us right off the bat. Says shove over. She's taking a seat at the table. It's great to see her. And Kenny's water bottle, who's been harassing us about getting this show back up and running, is here as well. Great to see everybody. We are so looking forward to this. We're going to bring Sheldon in right away. Ken, I just wanted to say hi. It's always good to see you. I've been seeing you over the computer mostly lately. Looks like you are there for the Jets game tonight, and you're not in front of a T-Bird for the first time in a long time. How are things going? That's right.
Things are fantastic. Yeah, I had a great time in Arizona. We got the rental property sold and enjoyed a little bit of the nice weather, and nice to be out on the road for a Jets road trip. Pulled the old F apparel suit out of the closet. Nice to get it on, getting some air miles for that as well. Definitely looking forward to chatting with Sheldon here. It's going to be a fun road trip. I mean, Nate Schmidt saying this morning they're going to have a pretty good idea of where things stand at the end of this trip, and it's an important one for them, obviously. They're 7 points out and needing some help in order to see if they can stick around. We've got the trade deadline around the corner, and it'll be interesting to see if they can try to build on that game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, because those last 40 minutes were pretty impressive. The first 20 minutes were a bit of that high event hockey we often talk about, but fun time of the year, we know, and definitely a great day for a chat with a fellow Manitoban, that's for sure.
No doubt. Now, Ken, I know we like to talk about this lots when it comes to the Jets. I'll probably ask Sheldon this because he spent some time in the league. It's probably a good question to ask him. But we always make so much of the Jets pregame skates, and when it's quiet out there, sometimes we'll say it sounds like a library out there. I think we're both of the feeling that healthy teams are loud, boisterous teams. The Jets have not been that for long stretches of the year, but from the pictures I was seeing, looks like they were having a lot of fun on the ice tomorrow. Did the pictures match the mood from what you saw?
Yeah, joy level was high this morning at the Prudential Center, no doubt about that. It was interesting. Mike McIntyre walked into the building and noticed that Eric Comrie was the first goalie on the ice. Now, that's not uncommon for him to be first, but then he started to go into a little bit more of the shooting routine, and I did speculate in my column on Wednesday morning that it might be a nice time to get Connor Hellebuyck an extra day of rest here going into the back-to-back. Obviously there's a little bit of a tie-in and a tug with Eric Comrie spending some time with the New Jersey Devils, so it's a good chance for him to face a team that he spent a little bit of time with. And also, too, it gets Hellebuyck an extra day of rest. We know it's 5 consecutive games with 4 goals or more allowed. He's played 47. I think he's had 48 starts in the 57 games, so it's a good time to get him a break, and it's a good chance for Eric Comrie to play again. But yeah, the joy level was a little bit higher. They're a little bit more upbeat, and we'll see if that translates onto the ice here this evening.
Well, you know how I feel about that topic. So does the chat room, so I'm not even going to launch into it. Let's just launch into what we want to do.
Indeed.
Let's get into a conversation with Sheldon Kennedy, who we're so happy to bring on to the show. Sheldon, how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, pretty good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing
awesome.
Really good. I've had the...
We did it!
Yeah, we pulled her together. You know what? Honestly, it's led to a big tease because we've been talking about you being on for our audience for a long time, and they're kind of tapping us on the shoulder while we do live shows after the Jets games, and every once in a while they'll be like, "When's Sheldon coming on? When's Sheldon coming on?" So it's great to get to this point. We're so excited to talk with you. I've had some. I know Ken and you go way back and have had plenty of conversations. I've had the joy of meeting you on numerous occasions and talking with you. It's 3 Manitoba boys sitting down here having a conversation. I'm interested in, since, we're all kind of rural boys. I know you haven't lived in Manitoba for a while. You've been out west, but I'm interested as a Manitoban, what part of Manitoba kind of remains with you throughout your life since you've left?
Friendly Manitoba. Hey, that's kind of what remains. I mean, my whole family's there, so I'm back there a lot. I mean, my mom's in Verdun. My sister and her husband, they're in Poland half of the year. They're over there right now. So there's lots going on, as we all know, over there. But they spend half the year in Oak Lake. And my two nephews are paramedic firefighters in Winnipeg, and my brother and his daughter wife live in Beausejour. So we're very connected to Manitoba still, but it's always friendly Manitoba. I mean, anybody we ever meet from that province is just we'll reach out and say hi, and it's an easy conversation to have.
We'll get into the difficult or the more important topics later on. But Sheldon, just in terms of the love for hockey, I mean, growing up in a small town, how did it become your passion? And how about the pursuit of that dream? And maybe just let us know how that unfolded a little bit for you.
You bet. Well, I mean, we grew up on a dairy farm, so we milked cows, went to school, played hockey in the winter and baseball in the summer. I mean, that was basically our life growing up. But I don't know. I mean, we played road hockey. We played underneath the lights. I always played a year ahead, above my age group with my brother's team, because we could only travel to one team. But we had a good team for rural Manitoba, coming out of Elkhorn, Manitoba, and we had some surrounding towns in there: Minneota, Oak Lake, Jason Taylor. I mean, we had a good squad, and I was never the best player on my team, but I guess there's scouts that come and they want to have you part of their list at that time. So I think the first time my brother and I we realized that maybe we had a chance to maybe play junior hockey. We were traded for the first time from the Winnipeg Warriors from the Brandon Wheat Kings to the Winnipeg Warriors for a guy named Randy Cameron, and I can't remember who the other guy was, but my brother went up and played a couple games with the Winnipeg Warriors at that time. So it just, I think it just kind of happened. I always dreamt to be a farmer, but I guess the hockey thing just kind of happened, and I just kind of went along and followed what the older kids were doing. But I think it was just a matter of playing so much hockey. Like, we'd play 3 games in a tournament in a day and then go out and played road hockey till midnight. So that's what I remember. And then we met Graham James. Things changed.
Sheldon, I there's a bunch of different directions I want to take that, but I'm glad you brought up your brother Troy. So I come from a small town called Lactabani, which is about an hour away from Beausejour. You know that. Actually, and I have talked about you making your way to Lactabani before. That's where I'm from. I played for the Lactabani Blues senior team for about 15 years, so I clashed for a number of years with your brother Troy, who played for the Beausejour Beavers at the time that I was there. I've always been kind of fascinated because we're in that league, we're in that senior league where everyone's telling the story about how they could have made it, right? You made it. I'm interested in the dynamic between brothers, between siblings who are both good at hockey, and one takes it all the way and the other one doesn't make it there. What's that dynamic like? I mean, is there, and I don't want to take this in a negative direction, but is there jealousy? Is there support? How does it work? How do you cheer on your brother who didn't quite make it as far as you did? How does he cheer you on, knowing maybe you got to a place that he was never able to get to?
Yeah, you bet. I remember Lactabani, where you can slide down the rocks. There's a place to go down there. Hey!
Old Pinawa Dam.
That's right.
That's the one.
Well, it's interesting. I get asked kind of questions about, I guess what you would call maybe the normal growing up of in the hockey world, and I have a hard time relating to that. I think, I left home at a very, very young age, and my brother and I left home at the same time to go play in Moose Jaw. I played my first game in the Western Hockey League at 15. My brother had played a few games at 16, quite a few games, maybe half the year. And I never ever felt any jealousy. I think that what was going on in my life when I left home really made me disconnected from family. I mean, and everybody basically, and so I basically had to cheer on my brother and my sister. My sister was a professional figure skater. I mean, she she skated her whole life as a very high level pair skater with her husband in Europe. So, it was something that we cheered on. We always cheered on. And I think if we look at the cornerstone of who kept us connected, because we were all over the world, was my mom. And my mom, we always were all over her because she carried around that video camera, those high eights, and you couldn't look at her without having that thing on you. So, we're like, would you put that thing down? And now when we go home to visit and we sit down, it's like, hey, where's that tape of this? Remember that? Remember this? So, I think that it's been the last few years that we've really kind of come together, and as siblings, I think, to really discuss and I guess, look back on maybe where we've been. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I think that, those are some of the losses that one takes, is your ability to love the game and be connected with those that you love. And that's what happens. And I think, with me, it's very hard to tell those stories, Sean, like I think most people expect to have in a situation like that. And it's not it's not that it impacts me today, but it's just when I reflect back, it's just a different path that my life took than probably most others that would have been in that position.
Yeah, for sure. Leaving home at that age. Sheldon, do you give advice to young, their kids at a young age in hockey? They got to make decisions. They want to go to college. They want to go to the Western League. How does your experience impact the way that you kind of share advice for folks in that situation?
Yeah, I don't know if I give, I don't know if I don't really spend my life trying to give people advice, but I think as far as if I could give advice, I think if what we try to do is build a confidence and a knowledge around all forms of abuse, bullying, harassment, discrimination. And I think our best defense is knowledge. Like as a parent myself, I have a 3-year-old son who, we're going through it again. I have a 26-year-old daughter, and I'll tell you, I wasn't at my best as I was trying to get my own life together when she was born. But, I get a second chance here to pay attention with Lachlan and to be in a better spot. And I think, if I could give any advice, not just for the kids that, have a chance to play, but as parents, just do your homework. Pay attention. Our best defense towards issues such as, and the individuals such as Graham James that are out there, and even just mental health issues. Our best defense is knowledge. And the more we can educate ourselves in this space, the better we're going to be as individuals, not only for ourselves and our family members, but also those around us. And I think that's got to be the key. And I think just, to me, do a gut check. If your gut's telling you something's up, or it's maybe not the right decision to leave home at such a young age, listen to your gut. I think we're going to be sold to leave home. We're going to be sold in many, many ways as a young person. If you have talent in any sport, that you need to do this and you need to do that and you need to do this. And I think, one thing, if I can give advice, is if you're good enough to make it, you're going to make it. And I think, take care of your well-being and what's important to you as a family, and your education to be number one.
Sheldon, we're going to drill down deeper into a lot of the issues you were just talking about. Something you touched on that I wanted to ask, though, I'm going to back up to about a question ago, is the idea of your family kind of being one of the things that was taken from you with all that happened through the Graham James situation. And I wonder, through your process of kind of, rebuilding your life from where you came from, how you go about, or if it's been a concerted effort for you to go about getting that back.
Well, I think, anytime we do any work, anybody has to do any work and around their mental health or mental well-being. And basically, I didn't really understand the impact that what had happened to me in my life as a young kid was going to have. We know more today. We know a lot more today about the impact of trauma and the impact on the, the developing brain of a young child when they're living in sustained traumatic experiences. I mean, we know that it changes the makeup of the brain. We know that. And, I think for me, I mean, something that I was very much ashamed of my whole life is coming from a small town where most people were proud that Sheldon made it to the NHL. And, I'm making headlines for going into a treatment center or going into a psych ward or going into a mental health hospital and, basically all of the above. I mean, that, we look at the incident that happened, like we look at, yes, there's the physical incident that happened to me and others, many others, from Graham James. But what happened is that set me up to live a certain way, to run from my feelings and confusion and self-hate, and which hurt a lot of people. So, in the healing process, it's not just dealing with the sexual abuse that happened to me. It was dealing with, everything else, that the way I was living my life to run from what happened to me. I impacted a lot of people too. So, I think it's like going to the gym. You don't go into the gym one time and boom, you got a six pack and you're fit and you can run a mile and a half in 8 minutes. Like, it's time and it takes practice. And I think that, any work that we do and that we set out to do, and for me to become better as a person and to move beyond the pain and the impact that I was, fighting and trying to hope went away for the most of my life, it's got to take a daily commitment and practice. And today I'm in a way better spot, but I practice. I know 2 or 3 things, on a daily basis. Exercise is important for me. And one thing that I always remember is that, if there's something in my head that's consuming me, the longer I don't address it, the bigger problem it's going to become. So I've learned to practice to be honest about that feeling, whatever it might be, with somebody. And as soon as I can, share that feeling with somebody, it loses all its power. And I keep that at front and center of my thoughts, because it's a big thing for me. I can, get very consumed with, self-hate, self-doubt, and suicidal thoughts, lots. That's just the reality. That's how I've been programmed because of what went on in my life. I know that. But it doesn't have to control your life. I mean, there's lots of people living in good recovery, and that's what I want to talk about is like, how do you get out of it? We hear so many stories of people, having terrible things happen to them in their life, but we don't hear too many stories about people living in good recovery and what it takes. And I think we need to hear more of those stories, because that's what we need. We need to give people hope that they can get their life back, whatever they've gone through. And I think, hopefully that's coming through clear, in my journey for who's ever watching.
Do you feel like the stigma attached to mental health and awareness is sort of being chipped away and moving in a positive direction? And what's it going to take to make that more front and center and to have it take on more of a prominent and positive role in those recoveries? Yeah,
I think, for sure, Ken. And I think we're so much farther ahead than where we were. I mean, it's been 25 years since my story broke. And I remember trying to, the conversation was so different back then than it is today. And I think, there's many reasons for that. I mean, we are having a societal shift. I think that, the media have done a great job, I think, over the many, many years of telling the story, that stories have been different. I think we're all educating ourselves. I believe that mental health across our country needs a focus, more of a focus, and a very, and I say focus that, and I mean, we need an integrated approach is what I'm saying. And I think that, there's a lot of great intention, but what I've learned about shifting systems, and what I've learned about making significant social change in areas that carry a lot of fear, is that we have to be very clear on exactly what we're trying to do. And I think that mental health right now, we ask people to tell, and we tell and we tell and talk, but I think the problem is that a lot of times right now, people are reaching out to get help, and the systems aren't able to respond to that. And I think that we need to make sure that we can respond to those that we tell to reach out. And I think that needs to be a focus. That's something that we're working on across the country, but I think we've come a long ways. I don't want to dismiss the fact that there's been a lot of progress. I just think that these issues are continually moving. They're continually changing as we learn more about them, and we have to be nimble and quick like that too as a system.
Sheldon, I want to go back to the moment where you decided to go public with your story. I mean, I don't think I'm being. I think I've heard you say in the past, it's saved your life, right? Coming out and talking about this is part of the process, acknowledging it. Like you said, the conversation was a lot different back then than it is now. So I think you would have a very deep understanding of what people who are struggling with something when they come to that moment, when it comes to a head of whether or not they're going to come out with their story or not. I wonder if you could take us back to that moment and some of the things that you struggled with. I'm assuming it took a lot of self-talk, but that moment when you finally kind of decided, this is it, I'm doing this. What was that moment like, and what did it take for you to get there?
Yeah. Well, I think that's an important part for anybody that's struggling with any type of mental struggles, emotional struggles, is how do we make that call? How do we actually reach our hand out and ask for help? And that's where the phone's 10,000 pounds, right? And but for me, I was I was in Detroit, and obviously I weighed out my welcome there, and got traded to Winnipeg, and then I was picked up on waivers from the Jets, to the Flames from the Jets, and when I came to Calgary, Graham James was part owner and the coach and general manager of the Calgary Hitmen. So when I was coming out of the locker room at the time, my life was absolutely a train wreck. I was having a harder and harder time as years went on to hold in, just keep it together. I was alcohol was rampant in my life, and I was struggling big time. And anyway, I came out of the locker room and on a few different occasions, and I'd see Graham James there, and he was with three other young players with the Hitmen, and waiting to talk and to me and introduced me to these young players. And then at the time, my wife was pregnant with our daughter Ryan. So I would come out of the locker room and I would look at these two scenarios, and one is, I would look at my wife and my daughter and I'd say, well, I will never be who I want to be and who I can be if I don't address the way I feel. And I couldn't even put a finger on the way I feel. All I knew at that time is that I was so confused, and just my head was consumed with suicide, and it's hard to explain, because I'd never heard about sexual abuse before in my life. And it was very difficult to try to understand, to tell anybody, because I was having a hard time even trying to explain it to anybody. So that was one scenario. And I'd look to my left, and I'd see Graham James there with these three kids, and I'm thinking, I have to do something, because I know what's going on here. And I went home, and I told my wife at the time, Jana, I said, I got to tell you something. All she said was, I believe you. That was it. That's all she said when I told her, is I believe you. And those were the biggest words that I could have ever heard, because I spent my whole life thinking that who is going to believe this drunk, wild, out of control kid, right? And that's the way I was painted by Graham, and that's the way I was living. I was living up to those expectations. And I just felt that I was so isolated, and that's one of the techniques that the perpetrators use, or any abuser uses, is to isolate. And So I felt that I was the only one this had ever happened to, but I needed to tell somebody. So I went to the police and I told them, and it kind of took its own course from there. But I think one of the things that I need to make sure I tell people is that when you disclose your story, or a bad guy goes to jail or whatever it might be, it's not over. It's just beginning. All the work that you need to do to get out of it is going to be in front of you, and that took a long time for me.
What was the reaction of teammates and friends? I mean, because of the stature that Graham had in the hockey business, and because the culture is so insular at times.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reaction by the players was really good. And I think that most of them probably had a really hard time understanding it. I mean, Dean Evison, my cousin, friend, Manitoban. I mean, Dino was there, and others, and they were compassionate, and that's all they needed to be. I think as the leadership group had a really hard time trying to understand what to do and to have this disclosure in front of them. I was sent to a hypnotist. It's just at that time, nobody knew how to handle this stuff. And I think it was just make it go away. And I guess for me, I just, I tried to finish out that season after disclosure. The investigation was going on. And I took, most 2 or 3 months at the start of the season. The next season I'd signed in Boston. But the reaction, when my story broke, was, it was huge. I mean, it was Newsmaker of the Year in 1997. And I don't want to say huge, wow, but it was way different than I would have ever thought. And I was, we were consumed with disclosures from people writing letters, tens of thousands of letters were coming to us, explain from all over the world, telling us their story. And one of the things that really connected and hit me was that, the stories were different, the time, the place, the gender was different, but the impact was very consistent. And, I think, coming back to the question, Ken, is that, I think there was a lot of compassion on an individual level, but at that time, I think that systems and organizations and society did not know how to deal with a disclosure of this magnitude in the level of, in the game at that time, or even, in any organization that would have the statue of hockey in Canada, right? It's not just hockey. I think it would happen in any.
You talk about that being the news story of the year. Shortly after that, you did your cross-country inline skating tour. And I remember thinking at the time, I mean, one, it was so courageous what you'd done, but it felt to me like, boy, oh boy, that was a big task to take on. Never mind the physicality of doing something like that. But we knew from, what we'd seen Terry Fox do when he was running across the country, that you'd be going through communities, you'd be meeting with people. People would be telling you those stories. I remember thinking you were taking on a lot at that time, and it could be pretty heavy. When you look back on that, was that something that added to your burden at times, or was that therapeutic?
Well, I don't know. I know one thing is that, I just really underestimated the impact of vicarious trauma and listening to disclosure after disclosure after disclosure. And I really didn't understand the skill of listening and understanding my role of how I could best help. I mean, I took people's pain on and I wanted to fix people. So I think in that sense, Sean, it had a huge impact on me. On the other side of it, I think that, we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, and that was to give a platform to bring a voice to an issue that has never had a voice before. And, we didn't have We had very, very little sponsorship. No one wanted to get involved, but it was basically a people's tour, and we raised, we raised a good amount of money. I think we were able to donate 1.7 million to the Red Cross, and that was basically raised on loonies and toonies from people. But I can tell you that the conversations and the masses of people that came out, it was significant. And but I think it goes to show, back to my earlier point, is that just because we disclosed, and that's what I learned, just because I disclosed, it doesn't mean it's over. I mean, I was in treatment 2 more times after the rollerblade just to get to a place where I can actually find some form of reprieve from the mental anguish that was going on in my head. I'm 18 years in recovery now, but I think I really learned a lot after that, and I learned and I can share that advice to people, anybody that's coming out that want to do this work, and we see it time and time and time again. You have to take care of yourself. And if you do not take care of yourself doing this kind of work, it's going to get you. And it got me. And, and I think that I've never made a decision to say, this is what I'm going to do. The people have just kept bringing me back to asking me to help and help. Can you help me here? Can you help our organization? Can you come do this? Can you do that? And I think that it's just evolved. I don't think I've ever made a conscious decision to say this is what I'm going to do, but here I am today, and I think the best thing that I could have done, and that I continue to do every day, is take care of myself and live in recovery, because I'm no good to anybody if I'm not healthy myself, and that's been my motto. And we need to show people that there is a way out. We can't just tell them. And, and I think that we need to walk the walk. And I think that, I try to do that the best I can. And I try to show up for people that, that need help. But I also have learned that it's important to say no. I understand that I can't help everybody, but I can give them the information that they may need to receive help from a professional organization.
How would you describe the bond that comes with having kind of shared experiences and having people feel comfortable sharing those things with you?
Well, I think it's important because I think that unless somebody's been through a situation themselves that has impacted them, have been impacted by trauma one way or another, it's very hard for them to really understand. And I think, basically we're dealing with the invisible, right? And so I think it's important. But I also think it's important to have conversations to find solution. I'm very much into solution, and I'm very much into letting people know that if you want to get out of this, I kept sitting waiting around for the doctors to fix me. And, because I think that's just how we grow up. You go, you're hurting, you go to the doctor, you're a psychiatrist, psychologist, or whatever it is, and they want to fix you. And I've had to realize that nobody's fixing me other than me. I have to do the work. I can be guided by professionals, but I have to do the work. And I pass that on to people. And I think, it's sometimes people don't want to hear it, but it's what they need to hear. And I think that, my whole focus is to get people to a place where they actually start feeling good about themselves again, and I know it's doable, because, I see it all the time, and I know what it takes to get there. And to me, I don't think people believe that it's possible. And I think that, I want to try to give them that hope and try to give them the basic tools to allow them to get to that place too, because I think the more champions we can get on finding a way out of that anguish and that desperate place, the more the more power we're going to have in our communities to help others.
Sheldon, I'm trying to think about similar figures to you in the news over the years, and I can't come up with a lot, but one parallel, I think it makes a ton of sense that you did the inline trip across the country, because what you've gone through reminds me of Terry Fox going through something absolutely terrible, and the strength that you show in facing up to it is really, I think, what changed everything and set this path that you've kind of navigated, and people have followed, and that people, I think, draw strength from the strength that you show. Now, this conversation we're having makes it clear behind the scenes. I mean, you've struggled and you've had struggles of your own, but to your point of when you were inline skating and people were coming up and telling you their stories, and that has continued on ever since throughout your life. Being the face of something, I'm sure there's a ton of pride from what you have accomplished over the years, and being the face of that movement, I'm sure has saved thousands, if not millions of lives across the world. But what's the pressure that comes with being the face of something like this for as long as you have been?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, Sean. I think I do feel, sometimes I feel pressure, but sometimes I feel it's a little bit of a gift. Sometimes I want to run and hide. But, not run and hide in a bad way. I just think that, sometimes it's, I think one of the things that's very much underestimated, I believe, in this area is the magnitude of how much it happens and how many people have been impacted. So, I barely go a day without, hearing a disclosure or getting a phone call to ask if I can help somebody get connected to a treatment center, and that's all my volunteer work. Like, the majority of the work that I do in this space, other than our work with Respect Group, I mean, speaking and stuff like that, I very rarely ever, it's not how I make my living. This is volunteer work, and I want to give back. And, one of the things that I feel proud about is the Child Advocacy Center and being able to shift systems. And, we've been able to bring, all the government systems together in the province of Alberta and change legislation to allow for information sharing amongst the organizations. And, that's police, justice, health, child and family, and we are absolutely changing outcomes for kids and their families. And we do every child abuse investigation there is in southern Alberta. And now we just announced the opening of a building on the Polytechnic campus in Red Deer College. So it's exciting. I love doing that work. But I think, Sean, it's again, it comes back to being humble, staying grounded, and staying healthy. I have to stay healthy emotionally. I've had to learn how to say no. I think I struggled with that. And, I said, yes, there was a time when I did over 300 keynote addresses per year with an audience over 200 people. That doesn't include all the school meetings, all the government meetings, all the and that took its toll. So I've had to learn from that, but we got a lot done. And I think sometimes when the iron's hot, you gotta cook, right? And you gotta brand. And so the iron was hot for a few years there, and I think that we were going, but I've definitely experienced burnout. I know that that's real, and I think that COVID's been it's been terrible for our country. Just everything that's gone on with it, whatever side of the fence that you find yourself on, it's just it's brought a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress with it. But I think the early part of COVID was a blessing in disguise, which it gave me an excuse to say no and step back and reset and go about things a little bit differently at a little different pace. And then I think it's been good. And I needed to do that because, I was struggling with just the amount of work that was in front of us and not being very good at saying no. So I think it has its ups and downs, Sean. I don't consider myself being a hero, or I don't think you do this work to be some super figure. I try to do what's right. I think I'm in a position to influence change and to work with those that can make change. And I think that, as long as I keep those things in front of me and close to me, we'll be able to keep doing that, hopefully for a few more years to come.
Obviously, we're trying to help people that are experiencing trauma in all areas, but why is it important to stay involved with hockey, Sheldon? I mean, given, obviously you realized your dream to play in the NHL, but hockey also took a lot of things away from you. It would have been easy to turn your back, but why was it important to you to stay involved and try to help people, and especially and to work with the NHL on this project moving forward?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been working working in the hockey world and other sport organizations and workplaces for 25 years. But I mean, I felt that I could help, and I think I've always come at these issues not to wreck the game of hockey and not come out swinging, screaming, yelling, fighting. But I think that I needed to be firm. We needed to understand where we were exactly coming from. We needed to know the truth. And once we understand the truth, then we can start moving forward and we can start building a better game. And I think that, obviously the purpose from day one of all of our work has been to make the game better. And I felt that hockey is such an influential game, not only in our country, but, also in other countries, that it had the power to change communities and better our communities in this space. And, I think if we look at Hockey Canada, I mean, they were the early leaders with the Speak Out program across this country, educating all their coaches. Now it's mandatory for every coach and some provinces' parents to take the Respect in Sport program. We've educated over 1.8 million Canadians and counting every day. And, I think that that's influenced. We now educate over 70 sport organizations in this country. But going back to Manitoba, Sport Manitoba was one of the early leaders in this movement. I think over 15 years ago, they made it mandatory for every coach in every sport to take training. Now, is it? Do I live in a panacea to think it's the end all be all? No. But what I do know is that empowering the bystander. If you look at any case, you look at the Graham James case, you look at most cases that happen. You look at the Kyle Beach story, you look at others. Like any case you want to look at, there's bystanders that surrounded these cases. And I look in the Swift Current case, and I mean, are they all terrible, bad people? No. Some of them I knew well, but I think the issues that we're talking about carry a significant amount of fear and lack of clarity on knowing what to do. And I feel that I go back to if we can create a confidence by continued learning within organizations, within people that are in front of our kids to empower the bystander, I think that that's our best defense. Now, obviously, we need to keep doing more and we need to keep doing more. But I think that what's happened lately with the NHL has been, if I look at that, how it's all unfolded, it came out very negative, but I think that, and people were hurt. And, but I look at situations like that and I think, okay, what are we going to do to learn from this and how are we going to get better? And what are we going to do to make sure that we can be leaders? And I look at the NHL and I think that they have a significant role in showing leadership in this space. And I think that that's been embraced. And, we are rolling out the Respect in the Workplace program with the league. The Jets, I know I met with Kevin, I met with Mark, and we've had some great conversations, and I've said this many times. I mean, Mark was instrumental in making this happen at the NHL level for everybody. Him and I worked very closely along with Kim Davis at the NHL level, and along with Gary and his leadership team. So, I'm confident that we're going to see not just a Band-Aid fix here. I think that, we're here and there's a plan for the long term, but not just for the league itself, but I think also how can they reach down into the community to show great leadership in this space, which I think that they have to do. And that's what we need. And I think that, at the end of the day, this is not just a hockey problem, it's a societal problem. And if you look at workplaces across this country, which we have over 2,000 clients, this is now becoming a priority inside their business. I mean, this is about a strong business plan. It's not just a policy and a procedure. So I'm excited about what's going to happen and what's coming, and the leadership of the Jets. I mean, I think that I mean, they were the first out of the gate with this, and just the connections that they're making in their community to be better overall in all of this area, I think is really important. And I think we need to look at that and strengthen that, and continually reach and understand the brand of hockey, and how do we create a one hockey approach from start to finish. I mean, that's how we get better.
Sheldon, I don't want to lose the stuff with the Jets and Gary Bettman, and I think Ken's going to jump on that. But you said something I don't want to lose here in the beginning of that question that I find fascinating. You talked about kind of addressing the game and doing so in a way that you didn't wreck the game of hockey, I think is the term that you used before that. I find that fascinating, and here's why. As a young man who was kind of burnt by, maybe the culture of silence that could exist in the game at times, I think that it would be very hard to find the balance as you were trying to address, as you were trying to protect people, as you were trying to change the game, not taking a wrecking ball to the game of hockey in an effort to kind of smash the parts of the game that needed to be smashed. It seems to me like that would take a lot of intelligence for a young man to go down that road, but like a lot of self-control to not kind of go in with a flamethrower at this situation. How did you know to take it with the balance that you did? Did you get advice on that, or was that an instinctual feeling that if you went in at the game of hockey too hard, that you were just going to turn hockey people off from your message?
Well, I've had my best friend and business partner, and for the last 25 years, Wayne McNeil has been been a mentor, and I've had great people in my life that have surrounded me, and I've been open-minded enough to listen. But I've also always taken the approach with any type of, I guess, problem is that let's learn from this and get better, and let's take the high road. And it's not, for us to make change in hockey, we got to work with hockey. Yeah. Right? You can't just swing from the outside and expect things to get done. I mean, we need to work with hockey. And it doesn't mean that sitting around a board table doesn't mean that I'm not as honest as we need to be to address the problems at hand, but we also need to also bring to that table solutions. And I think that it's not a lack of willingness to be better and to learn. I think that there's been a lot of teaching over the years of this isn't a one-off, right? It's not an isolated case, and your people are going to thank you for bringing this forward and making it a priority over time, because there has been a major shift. When we first started doing this work, it meant if you had a prevention program in around any form of abuse, bullying, harassment, discrimination, that meant you had problems and we're not signing up. Well, over the years, we've done so much work in schools that the young people are now parents, and they're now volunteer coaches, or they now work in a leadership role at a business. So they expect that this stuff's in place. So it's really been a shift in society, as I think that, you've probably seen, and you probably saw from the outpouring in the Chicago Blackhawks Kyle Beach case, that there's an expectation from a society that we're better in this area. And now it becomes a recruitment and a retention tool for organizations to look to see how well we're doing in this area within their organization. So, that's been a shift. I think that you never do this alone. Like I've had significant amount of help for a long time, and and just people helping me. And I think and the willingness of leaders to make that courageous decision. I mean, you look at Jeff Natchuk 15 years ago and his group, and Janet McMahon at Sport Manitoba, and all the leaders of each organization to say, we're going to make this mandatory. And, Eric Robinson, who was the minister at the time, I mean, they had to make a decision. It's not Sheldon Kennedy making the decision to say this is going to be mandatory in Sport Manitoba for every coach. It was them. and they needed to trust and they needed to believe what we were saying. And I think that, with the data that we're able to collect on what people are telling them, it's like, people want this. They want to learn. They want to understand that organizations are doing everything that they can to make sure that they're not only the safest, but the healthiest places they can be. Now, do I live in a panacea to think this is about being perfect? Absolutely not. I think the work we do in this space is about practice. We need to practice on a daily basis, on a yearly basis with, ourselves and our organizations and our teams to continually get better. And that's, what I feel is the key, right? But people think they have to be perfect in this space. I think that we always need to strive to be perfect, but we're never going to get perfect, and we're never going to have a finish line working in this field.
Obviously, Sheldon, there was a pretty big spotlight on Mark Chipman and Kevin Cheveldayoff around the Kyle Beach story. What sense did you get about their commitment level to being part of the change, which is, part of the biggest reason I think that Mark stood beside Kevin is because of their ability to maybe impact the change. What sense do you get from those two in those conversations you've had with them?
Yeah. Well, I know Kevin and I know Mark, and we had a conversation, had a really good conversation with both of them. And I can tell you that, they both want to do everything they can to make a difference. And I think that, and to learn from. And I think if you look at somebody like in Kevin's position, I think that he's getting a chance to, and we've said this to him. I said it on Hockey Night in Canada. I think he's got a chance to get this right. And I think that he can teach many others, how to be better in this space, learn from what happened and what didn't happen, and how am I going to be better moving forward. And I think, I think Kevin is a quiet guy, but I think that, from my conversation with him, there's an absolute commitment from him to do everything that he can to make sure that any team that he's in charge of is making this a priority within that locker room and within that club. And I felt the same from Mark. I think Mark's a born leader in many ways. I think he's shown great leadership within the league on many issues, but I think this issue in particular, Mark has I think it's impacted him, as I think you could see from the press conference, and I think that, there is a commitment from both of them to be the best they can be, not just in Winnipeg, not just with the Winnipeg Jets, but obviously the province of Manitoba and throughout the league. And so, to me, the proof's in the pudding. So far the pudding's been good, right? And I believe in my heart that it's going to continue to do good. They're good people, and I think that this has been a very difficult situation for both of them. But I believe that they're both smart enough to learn and understand that we can always be better, and the opportunity that's in front of us is we need to be better for those that are going to come after us and all those that want to come into the game. This is about growing the game, and we all have a part to play in that.
Sheldon, if you went back to the Sheldon Kennedy, the version of Sheldon Kennedy that was, lost, hurting, hadn't yet come out with
drinking beer at the Pinawa Dam.
There you go. I probably saw you there. If you go back to that version of Sheldon Kennedy and he was able to see where you are now and what you have accomplished, what would that Sheldon Kennedy think of you?
I don't know. That's a good question. I always felt that I could be more than what I was when I was fumbling around, struggling. And I always felt I was going to get there. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. And I don't know what getting there even means. I think the most important thing for me is just, it's about hope. Like, I know when, Governor General David Johnson called me and said, Sheldon, we want to induct you into the Order of Canada. To me, I think it represents hope. And I think that, me receiving that is not about Sheldon, but it's about the issues. And I hope that it gave everybody, it showed them that there's a way out. And I feel, and I think that's probably where I would have the most pride, is that I never ever believed that I could shut my head off from the crazy and the self-hate. And I never believed that I could get to that place where I thought as a young kid and my whole career, even though I was, living a certain way, and, being in trouble and in treatment centers and unhealthy, even though I was doing that, in my head, I always knew that wasn't me, but I couldn't understand why I kept doing it. And to be able to finally get to a place where, I feel like I feel good about myself. I've got good relationships with those closest to me. My daughter, who's 26, we do a lot of work together on trying to repair that. I mean, think of that, right? So she's a young kid. Dad's trying to get sober, working through this stuff. She sees dad going to treatment centers all the time. I mean, she's been impacted just from me being impacted. I'm trying to do, and I'll tell you, as you're climbing out of the recovery tank, trying to scratch and claw to get out of it. It's not easy, and it's not pretty sometimes. And, again, it's that wreckage that you leave on your path, that people that you've impacted that are closest to you, that you've got to make those amends. But, things that, I guess, just the gratitude, I think that's what it is gratitude that things are happening in my life that I never thought would be happening. And they're just simple, basic things in life. Being a father to a 3-year-old and being able to just love that little guy like there's no tomorrow, and having strong relationships with my family and friends, and showing up, being accountable. I was never accountable. And to be able to sit and chat with, Kevin and Mark, and, and let's chat about, what are we going to do to make this better? Things like that would have never happened before. So for that, I have a lot of gratitude.
We have a lot of gratitude for you investing your time with us, Sheldon, and you're an inspiration to many, and we thank you for sharing your thoughts with us and our listeners and viewers as well.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ken and Sean. It was thanks for having me on, and it was a really good conversation. Who would have thunk that 3 friendly Manitoba people would have had a conversation like that, eh?
You bet. Well, I got to say, you touched on not only gratitude in your last answer there, you touched on some themes about hope and finding a way out. I think in the end, that's going to be your legacy. I mean, I think what you've done is you offered a lot of hope to a lot of people, but maybe even more importantly, you provided a way out of trauma, I think, that people didn't know existed before you very publicly went through what you went through. I think you created a wave that's kind of washed not only across this country, but everywhere, and provided an example. And like Ken said, we have so much gratitude for you opening yourself up to us. It means a ton. And I'll say this, if you're ever back around Lac du Bonnet, you want to head to Old Pinnawall, call Ken. He'll come up from the city and we'll hold hands and go sliding down that rock together.
Right on, with a root beer.
Perfect. Things got to change, but not too
See you
much.
later.
Sheldon, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Have a good day, everyone.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Wow. What's to
Awesome.
say? I know that I had one of the things, you've had a ton of conversations with Sheldon before. A few years back, we were doing a hometown hockey in Swift Current, and they went there and they released, it was kind of, they used it as a release for the documentary Swift Current, which is all about Sheldon Kennedy's struggle that he went through and has gone through since. And it's powerful, powerful stuff. I had the chance to talk to him then. he had when we were young kids, we were still in high school. He's talking about being out in Lactobon. It was a buzz, right? Everyone knew that Sheldon Kennedy had been in town, and I used that opportunity to go and say, because I think my sister had been at a party that he'd been at, and a bunch of my friends, because I'd hang out with older kids, but I wasn't quite old enough to go to that party. Had been there, and I remember I just thought it was important to go talk to him and say that not only had he caused like a wave in town when he came and did that, and clearly that would have been a tough time for him, right? That would have been when he was going through some of his tough times, but just there was always a feeling afterwards with the people who had met him that they were rooting for him, right? Like they knew that there was problems. And I think there was a ton of happiness in those people that he'd met, that even when he went through the time of his life where I'm sure he talked about creating trauma for not only himself, but for his family and the people around him. I think even when he was going through his lowest times, there was something about him in his character that he created. He was a character that people were rooting for, and it's so nice to have seen him come out the way that he's come out and accomplish what he's accomplished. I don't know that we've had a more important Kenny and Renny than this, Ken, but that was phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, it was awesome. And yeah, I mean, my time with Sheldon is limited, but when I was a 15-year-old with dreams of playing in the National Hockey League and was a list player by the Swift Current Broncos, in our scrimmage, Sheldon Kennedy was the player behind my bench. And when I walked into that Swift Current rink for the first time, seeing Joe Sakic and Manitoban Dan Lambert and Sheldon skating, like that's the stuff where you're looking on the ice and saying you want to be like them.
Yeah.
And I just love the fact that Sheldon's doing such incredible work. And like I said, it would have been easy for him to turn his back on hockey. And to me, it says so much about him as an individual that he still has so much passion and wants to take the game to a much better place and be part of those solutions, rather than turning his back and saying this is somebody else's problem to take care of.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you so much for everyone who joined us and who will be listening to this going forward. I'm damn proud of the conversation that we just had here, and I think Lynn Reimer's got this right. Everyone in the chat should share this show on their socials, not just K&R. I'm sure we all know someone who needs to hear Sheldon. I couldn't agree with that more. I hope that this is heard loud and wide. I know that these long form shows aren't consumed quite as heavily as our post game shows, but if you would do us the honor of sharing these in your social circles, everyone who's listening to this after the fact, if you would do us that same honor and try and get this out there. Sheldon Kennedy saves lives with his message, and we feel this is just the kind of message that people need to have heard out there. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Game day tonight. Jets play the New Jersey Devils, and we got a guy who's going to be on the scene to talk about it after the game. So perfect. Going to be great to talk to you tonight, Ken. Hope to see everybody there tonight. We will see you after the game.